welcome. Or maybe it's better to say, welcome into the quiet, into the shadows, into the drifting space that appears once the lights go out and the world softens around the edges. Settle in, sink down, let your breathing slow just a little. Tonight I'm going to tell you a story wrapped in salt water and silence. A story that has echoed across oceans for more than a century. A story about a ship that should have been full of life, but was found drifting completely alone. No captain, no crew, no footsteps, only the quiet creak of timbers and the endless breath of the Atlantic. This is the story of the Mary Celeste. But before we step aboard that ghostly deck, before we open the door to the mystery itself, let's travel back to a time when the ocean was larger than our understanding, and sailors believed the sea held secrets that humans were never meant to touch. The year was 1872, a time when maps were trustworthy, but the world was still wild. A time when a voyage across the Atlantic wasn't just a journey, it was a small act of faith. Mary Celeste wasn't a new ship. She'd been built in 1861 under a different name, Amazon. And from the beginning, she was touched by strange luck. Captains dying suddenly, collisions, fires, repairs upon repairs. It wasn't enough for anyone to call her cursed, but enough to make sailors whisper when they passed her hull. Still, she endured. Every setback repaired, every accident survived, almost as if the ship wanted to keep sailing. In 1869, she was given a new name, Mary Celeste, and 3 years later, she was preparing for what seemed like a simple voyage. Captain Benjamin Briggs, an admired, calm, deeply religious man, was to command her. He brought with him his wife, Sarah, gentle and bright, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia, always tugging at her mother's dress. The crew, 7 experienced sailors, loyal, respected, competent. On November 7th, 1872, they set sail from New York, bound for Italy. They had no idea they were sailing straight into history. Picture the Mary Celeste on her first days at sea. Canvas, sails stretched tight, the Atlantic wind pushing her forward, the creaking rhythm of ropes and masts weaving with the soft laughter of a child somewhere below deck. Captain Briggs kept a detailed log. His entries were calm, methodical, ordinary. No storms, no panic, no signs of trouble. Just a ship, a crew, and a family crossing a vast, quiet ocean. Days passed in peaceful repetition. Morning checks, sail adjustments, meals shared in the captain's cabin. Evening prayers whispered softly as the sky darkened. Nothing unusual, nothing ominous. On the Mary Celeste, life simply moved, steady as the tide. But somewhere out on that cold water, something else was moving too. Something unseen, something patient. None of them knew it yet, but the ship was carrying more than cargo. It was carrying fate. 8 days behind her, another vessel trailed the same route. A ship called the Dei Gratia, commanded by Captain David Morehouse, a personal friend of Briggs. It was a detail that later would raise eyebrows, and fuel theories darker than the ocean floor. But for now, the two ships drifted separately, the Atlantic breathing between them. On November 24th, the Mary Celeste's log recorded her position near the Azores Islands. Briggs's handwriting was steady, his words ordinary. It would be the last entry he ever wrote. The next 10 days disappeared into silence. December 4th, 1872, late afternoon. The Dei Gratia spotted a small ship on the horizon, moving strangely. Her sails were half set, flapping weakly. She drifted at an odd angle, as though no one was correcting her course. And most concerning of all, there was no one on deck. Morehouse raised his spyglass. At first, he didn't recognize her, but as she came closer, his breath caught in his chest. The letters on the bow were unmistakable. Mary Celeste, his friend's ship. He ordered a small boarding party. 2 sailors rowed across the quiet water, their oars slicing through the stillness. As they climbed aboard, what they found was stranger than anything they could have imagined. The deck was empty, no bodies, no blood, no signs of struggle. Below deck, the cabins were neat, almost untouched. Clothes hung tidily. Stored food remained untouched. The cargo, more than 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol, was intact. The lifeboat was missing. But the ship, she was perfectly seaworthy. Dry, clean, stable. It was as if the crew had simply walked off mid-sentence into the empty air. And then there was the strangest detail of all. The captain's log stopped abruptly. No warnings, no fear, no storms, just nothing. A ship in perfect condition. A crew vanished into thin air. Somewhere between New York and the Azores, 21 people had disappeared without leaving a single footprint behind. Mary Celeste wasn't a ghost ship. She was an unanswered question drifting across the sea. When the Mary Celeste was brought to Gibraltar for official investigation, theories exploded like sparks from a fire. At first, authorities suspected foul play, mutiny, but the crew had no history of violence and nothing had been stolen. Pirates, but everything of value remained neatly in place. Insurance fraud, a staged disappearance, but there was no evidence and no one benefited. Morehouse, the man who found the ship, was even accused of orchestrating an elaborate crime, but investigators found no motive, no connection that made sense. Then came the storm theories. A waterspout, perhaps. One of those vertical sea tornadoes that can terrify even the bravest sailors. But the ship showed no damage, no signs of panic. Some suggested alcohol fumes had leaked from the barrels below deck, causing the crew to fear an explosion. Maybe they launched the lifeboat temporarily, waiting for the fumes to clear, only to be separated by wind, lost forever in the vastness. It's a logical theory, clean, comforting. But it leaves a strange question. Why take everyone, including a toddler, into a single small boat when the main ship was safe? Then there were the darker speculations. Sea monsters, paranormal forces, something ancient rising from the ocean depths. Ridiculous, maybe. But on a quiet night, when the waves whisper and the moon glints like an eye, even the impossible feels close. The investigation ended with no answers. Mary Celeste was released back into service, as if the ocean had merely borrowed her for a while. But the people she had carried, they were never seen again. With no explanation, stories began to grow around the ship, each one stranger than the last. Some sailors claimed they saw shadows on her deck at night, silhouettes moving where no human stood. Others whispered that the ship groaned in a different way, a deeper way, as if it remembered what had happened and wanted to tell someone, but couldn't. One crew reported hearing footsteps below deck when they knew they were alone. Another swore they heard a child crying in the early hours, only to find the cabins empty. Most dismissed these tales as superstition, sailor gossip, exaggerations born from long nights and cold winds. But when a ship earns a reputation, it sticks. Mary Celeste became the Atlantic's ghost bride, a vessel touched by something unseen, unexplained, and unwilling to let go. Even after she was sold and resold, even after new captains tried to restore her image, the stories clung to her hull like barnacles. And then, years later, her end came in a way that felt almost deliberate. Her final captain intentionally wrecked her on a reef as part of an insurance scam, a desperate, foolish act. She broke apart under crashing waves, splintering into pieces, sinking slowly beneath the tide. And with her, the last physical remnant of the mystery disappeared. But the story, that refused to sink. Even today, historians and experts debate the truth. Did Briggs and his entire crew abandon ship because they misread the instruments and believed she was sinking? Did alcohol fumes drive them off temporarily, only for the lifeboat to detach and drift away forever? Was there a sudden seaquake, a rogue wave, a silent, heart-stopping phenomenon that struck without warning? Or was it something else? Something no investigation wanted to write down. Something that begins where logic ends. Because the ocean is a strange place. A place older than every human story. A place that hides things, keeps things, whispers things. What if the crew saw something, or heard something, that made staying aboard feel impossible? What if they fled not from danger, but from fear? There are no answers, only theories, and a ship that sailed on without the souls who once guided her. And now we drift to the end of the tale. The Mary Celeste rests somewhere at the bottom of the sea, her timbers long dissolved, her sails long torn, her story very much alive. Ships vanish, storms rise, waves swallow the world's secrets, but something about this story refuses to fade. Maybe it's because the ocean never explained herself. Maybe it's because 21 people stepped into history and then stepped out again without a trace. Or maybe it's because some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some are meant to linger, to drift through our minds like a ship with empty decks and open doors, creaking softly as it moves through the fog. And tonight, if you listen closely, you might still hear her, the ghost ship of the Atlantic, gliding somewhere out there just beyond the reach of the known. Silent, patient, waiting. Good night, and let the mystery follow you gently into the dark. Thank you for listening, and for drifting through this mystery with me tonight. Your time, your presence, it truly means a lot. If you enjoyed this story, a like or a subscription helps the channel more than you know. And I'm genuinely grateful for every single one of you who chooses to support these midnight tales. Until next time, rest well, stay curious, and may the shadows treat you kindly.